going to deny that there is an issue in our government. However, there is an even bigger issue within the American people as a whole. And if this nation gets pulled any further apart, I don't know what we're gonna do. Alright folks, we're talking about the election again. I've filmed and refilmed this video because things just keep happening that makes this all the more important. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died. She died right as I had kind of decided that I didn't need to reshoot this video again. I'd been taking notes on the Trump town hall and I was so heated and I was like, I gotta take a break from politics. And minutes after I backed away from my computer, I started getting texts that she died and I was like, oh. Her dying wish was that she not be replaced until a new president is installed. Not even a full day after her death was announced, Mitch McConnell used the second half of her eulogy to announce that even though he has just over a month left in his term, Trump would be nominating her replacement. Classy. Now, Joe Biden was not pleased with this. He said, the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice. Therefore, this vacancy should not be filled until we have a new president. Oh, sorry, I meant Mitch McConnell again. Mitch McConnell said that in 2016. 4 years ago, Lindsey Graham said,
if there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me and you'd be absolutely right.
Bold statement from Lindsey Graham. Can you guess what he's saying now? Those were different circumstances. I know that I was alluding to this exact point in time, but it's different. This country has become so divorced from reality that it's indistinguishable from satire. How do I make this funny? I don't have the time or energy to reshoot this whole video again, so I'm just gonna hand you over to take 5, Cameron. So let's talk about the two-party system. Y'all need to vote. You need to vote. And you need to vote within the two-party system, okay? Listen to me. There's an extremely strong emotional argument to be made here, but just for you, I'm gonna try to keep this to facts and logic. The electoral system that we have right now is very challenging. Also, you need to vote. Furthermore, the two-party system is reductive and ineffective. Nevertheless, you need to vote in the two-party system. Listen to me, okay? I know. The choice sucks, I get it, I really do. Biden's not super progressive. He's got a lot of policies that we don't agree with. But hey, this is not even about Biden anymore. Can I be Captain Obvious for a minute here? What's going on right now is not normal. We've got armed Rambo wannabe teenagers and adults killing people in the streets, and the press is just like, well, they had to maintain order when no one else would. No. Look, helping the police? If I walk into an OR and try to help out with a heart transplant, and then that person dies, I don't get to go, oh, but I was just trying to help. And the president breaks law after law and has scandal after scandal and is constantly spewing racist dog whistles and advocating racist legislation. So that's the bar right now. Something that I've noticed about the enlightened centrist attitude is that it manages to balance this really strong emphasis on nuance with a complete disregard for nuance. Because here's what's happening right now. We are in a car careening toward the edge of a cliff. And you, as the voter, you're at the wheel. And sure, there's a possibility that even if you try to steer, you can't keep us from going off the cliff. But what you're doing instead is deliberately keeping your hands off the wheel so that when we inevitably plummet into the ether, you can say, oh, it's not my fault, because you didn't technically take any action to affect the outcome in any way. And you feel principled, because you technically didn't do anything wrong, but you also didn't grab the wheel. And that analogy is true whether you choose not to vote or you choose to vote third party. Let's talk about why. Hey, before I start this argument, I just want to address something really quickly. When I shot this, the audience that I had in mind was primarily progressive and liberal white people who are kind of virtue signaling and acting like they've just discovered that most politicians are bad to some extent. But I do understand that there are a lot more layers to this issue, especially when it comes to people of color, because I feel like the Democratic Party tends to view people of color as kind of a guaranteed vote, and then they don't really try to cater to them. So those people have been lesser evil voting for decades and are probably pretty fed up with it, which is valid. And my mom's gonna be annoyed because she's like, you need to stop qualifying all your arguments. But this is a nuanced issue, and I don't want to be dogmatic. I want you to vote for Biden, but I don't want you to think that I don't understand why that's a difficult decision to make. I just think you should make it anyway. Well, I don't need to vote, I'm just one person. I'm not even in a swing state. So your vote pales in comparison to what the majority of voters in your state want, right? But here's the thing, you know what the majority of voters did in the last election? They didn't vote. In the 2016 election, only 8 states plus Washington, D.C. had a high enough voter turnout that one candidate actually got a plurality of the voters. In the other 42 states, more people chose not to vote than to vote for any one candidate. Oh, but I just don't care about politics. I'm not involved in that stuff. It doesn't make sense for me to go to the polls. Okay, you're not into politics. You know who is? Your boss, your insurance provider, likely the majority of people that you talk to, whether you know it or not. I don't know why we have this idea that politics are just like this theoretical entity separate from reality, but they're not. Politics affects everyone. Wow, but the election is rigged anyway. The outcome's already been decided. I have no say in that. You know what? Some parts of that statement might be kind of true. Did you know that just 2 weeks ago, the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is majority Republican, put out their final report on the Russiagate investigation, in which they say, and I quote, "Indeed, Russia is actively interfering again in the 2020 US election to assist Donald Trump, and some of the president's associates are amplifying those efforts." That's directly from DC, and they have evidence to back it up. A lot of evidence. And yeah, there's even more interference this year. Trump has overtly announced that he will not be backing funding for the USPS because to give them that funding would be to allow them to more effectively process mail-in votes, which is statistically a thing that Biden voters are much more likely to do than Trump voters. And if you look at which areas of the US have had the greatest degree of Postal Service intervention compared to which areas voted blue in the 2016 election, interesting. Not to mention he's literally encouraging voter fraud, and you can be like, oh, but he's saying it because it won't work. He's been doing backflips around the Hatch Act since he took office, and he's only amped it up during his campaign, holding partisan events at the White House, using pardons and naturalizations as marketing material. So yeah, there's a lot of foul play in this election, and there's a lot of voter suppression. That's why every vote is so important. And I'm sorry, but you can't vote independent either, not at this juncture. But voting for an independent candidate shows your elected officials that you're not satisfied with the current system. It pushes them to change. That could be true, but it's not. The independent vote will never have a large enough presence in the election to send any message to anyone, and that's very much on purpose. The two-party system is deliberately constructed against independent candidates. Like, I don't think you understand the extent to which they cannot win. You may or may not have heard of a little thing called the spoiler effect. Depending on who you talk to, that may be seen as a good or a bad thing. That's because there are two facets to the spoiler effect, both of which I will demonstrate through this hypothetical election. Say we have the pizza party and the pasta party. Pasta makes up 52% of the electorate in one state, and pizza makes up 48%. Supposing that everyone in that state shows up to the polls and votes with their party affiliation, statistically pasta should win, right? But in comes this third party. It's a rigatoni pie. Now, a rigatoni pie has elements of both pizza and pasta, so there's a possibility that it would have more widespread bipartisan appeal, right? But we would have to hope that enough voters even know what rigatoni pie is, let alone are interested enough to vote for it. Because again, breaking from the analogy for a second, the system that we have here is very much structured against third-party candidates. They aren't guaranteed a spot in the debates. They rarely have anything close to the campaign finance that the candidates with major party backing do, whereas the Republican and Democrat nominees are basically household names by November. So back to the rigatoni pie. Some pasta voters end up looking at it and going, you know what? This guy gets it. I'm gonna vote for him instead. So if the pie gets 5% of the total vote, primarily from pasta-leaning voters, then we end up with 47% for pasta and 48% for pizza, which means that no one candidate gets a majority of the vote. This is the first part of the spoiler effect, and it's cited by the official Libertarian Party website as proof that they could significantly impact the election so long as they can get enough electoral votes that no party can get a majority. But in state elections, you don't need a majority to win. You just need to get the most votes. And that's where the second, more sinister part comes in. Even though 52% of the state was decidedly anti-pizza, they split their vote between two candidates, ultimately allowing pizza, the least favored party, to win. And that's what happens state to state. A lot of you, right when I said spoiler, probably thought of Ralph Nader. For those unfamiliar, Ralph Nader was the Green Party candidate in the 2000 election between George Bush and Al Gore. That election was won by a margin of 537 votes. No, Cameron, that can't be right. That was a presidential election. It must have been won by more than that. Well, yes, but also no. Technically, Gore got 543,000 more votes than Bush did. But the popular vote actually doesn't matter. It's all about the Electoral College. And the final count for electoral votes came down to Florida. And to cast your ballot there, you punched a hole in a card, and that little thing there is called chads, and there was a whole incident with hanging chads, or fat chads, which were also called pregnant chads. Florida was the deciding state in that election. And from the 6 million votes cast, Bush won to Gore by a margin of 537. 537, that's half my graduating class. That's this many people. So every vote counts, right? But what does that have to do with Ralph Nader? Well, he got 97,488 votes in Florida. Now, I ran the numbers. 97,000 is greater than 537. And even though the difference between Bush and Gore was less than 1/100%, by the structure of the Electoral College, Bush got all 25 votes for Florida, ultimately winning him the election. So that's not great. Our electoral system is not great. It needs change. But it's what we have right now. So the most radical thing that you can do is use the flawed system to cast your vote towards creating a better one. The fact that Parliament is an institution of the bourgeois state can in no way be used as an argument against participating in the parliamentary struggle. That's from Lenin. You think you're more radical than Lenin? I get it, we want progress, right? That's why we don't like this lineup, because it's two old men with ties to the establishment. That's not progressive. But look at the bigger picture. We are actually at a historical point in time in which the Democratic Party might need to capitulate to the progressives for votes. You can see it in all the tokenism that they've been doing. Like, it's not good, but they're trying, because more and more congressional candidates have been losing to or feeling pressure from more radical progressive opponents. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her first primary in 2018 against a 10-term incumbent, and she just won her second primary against Michelle Caruso, who had backing from a bunch of Wall Street people. We also had big progressive wins in Missouri, Michigan, and Illinois. Bernie Sanders, despite his unsuccessful presidential campaigns, has changed the dialogue in America. He's forced us all to take a hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves if we've done enough. And these aren't my words, they're Joe Biden's. The point is, we are fighting for more progressive policies and we are winning. And you're about to throw that all away on some misinformed idea that the Democratic Party is gonna defer to your concerns after you prove you won't vote for them? Here's the thing. Voting is your civic duty. Voting is a moral obligation. But voting is not a form of self-expression. There are plenty of places for us to announce our problems with the system and to share our individual, moral, social, and economic philosophies. The ballot box is not one of them. The basic moral principle at stake is simple. Not only must we take responsibility for our actions, but the consequences of our actions for others are a far more important consideration than feeling good about ourselves. So many people in this country are being deprived of their right to vote, and for that reason, this is not just about what you want. Right now, it doesn't matter that you don't like either of the candidates. One of them is going to get the spot. Which of them would you rather take the reins? Teens, high schoolers, college students. You want to party? I want to party. But right now we can't party, or we'll get this. So you want to get rid of the Rona? Well, we gotta do something about it. Biden has a 7-point plan for how to handle this, which includes making testing and other resources more accessible, protecting those who are at a higher risk, and investing $25 billion into the development of a vaccine. And say what you want about that plan, but what the current guy is doing is deliberately not testing so our numbers look better.
When you do testing to that extent, you're gonna find more people, you're gonna find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
And then doubling down on that claim after his aides tried to say he was just kidding.
I don't kid. Let me just tell you, let me make it clear.
Saying other countries are lying about their mortality rate.
Well, look at South Korea, for example. 51 million population, 300 deaths. It's like, it's crazy compared to other countries. I do, it's on the...
don't know that.
You think they're faking their statistics, South Korea?
I won't get into that because I have a very good relationship with the country, but you don't know that.
And then lying about our mortality rate.
I think it's the opposite. I think we have one of the lowest mortality rates in the world. Well, we're going to take a look.
We had 900 deaths on a single day.
We will take a look.
This week.
Ready?
You can check it out.
Could you please get me the mortality rate? I heard we had one of the lowest, maybe the lowest mortality rate anywhere in the world. Do you have the numbers, please? Because I heard we had the best mortality rate.
Oh my God. I just want to say that I have a works cited linked in the description of this video, and nowhere in there does it say some people are saying or I heard, because those aren't sources. And then he admitted the thing that we all kind of knew anyway, which is that he's had all the information since February and he's just been downplaying it to make it look better.
You just breathe the air, that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one, that's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is deadly stuff.
3 weeks later, President Trump told the American people a totally different story.
It's a little like the regular flu that we have flu shots for.
It's going to be fine. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It will go away. You know it is going away. It's gonna go. It's gonna leave. It's gonna be gone. It's going away. Our numbers are much lower now. I think that that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope. It's going to disappear and I'll be right. No question in my mind, it'll go away. It's going to go away. It didn't go away. 6.5 million cases. It's not going anywhere. But the incumbent president, in an effort to preserve his own ego, has made whether people live or die a partisan issue.
And if this nation gets pulled any further apart, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Like, is everyone in this country gonna have to lose a family member before we can admit that this is a real issue? Would that even do it? I don't even know if that would do it. We've lost nearly 200,000 people, and we're gonna lose more. And that impact will long outlast either presidency. And you know what else is gonna outlast either of these presidencies? The Supreme Court. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died, and Trump has a very unsettling shortlist. Look, I think a lot of us want widespread systemic change. We want a revolution, and you can't do that with just a vote. But here's the thing. Voting isn't praxis. Voting is just a thing you need to do. Praxis comes afterward. But in November, I beg of you, please vote. I really do get it. It's hard to directly endorse someone with whom you disagree so much, but guys, it's so unbelievably okay to scrutinize the president. We can put Biden in office and scrutinize the shit out of him, but we need to put him in office first, because the guy in office right now doesn't care what we have to say. That's why Republicans win elections so often, because they vote for the party and not the person. Your job is not to choose the better candidate, but the better agenda. And I didn't say best, but better. And remember for reference that the current president has made it very clear that he doesn't care if his people live or die as long as he wins again. So vote for the Supreme Court. Vote for civil rights. Vote for the rule of law. Vote for the first female vice president of color. And hey, before you shit all over Kamala, remember that the alternative is Mike Pence. And again, the fact that he's got a woman of color as his running mate, the fact that he said he's gonna put a woman of color on the bench, it's performative, it's tokeny, but it shows that he wants progressives on his side. Vote for making America respected abroad, or at least not the laughingstock that we are now. Vote for a public health policy based on science and facts and logic. Vote for the future generations, because the generations before us sure haven't voted for us. But that's who it's on now. The Zoomers, Gen Z. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but should we choose to accept the task, we could be the generation that saves this democracy from itself. Please vote. Please vote. Where's my mail-in ballot? I don't know if I can show it. In some places you can. Please vote. And if you can, put your mail-in ballot directly in a ballot box, because... And I know that Biden has advocated and supported a lot of racist legislation in the past. But I'm sure on whatever day I'm editing this, I can find a new racist thing that Trump has spouted, because he does it all the time.
The racehorse theory, you think was so different? You have good genes in Minnesota. The China virus, the World Health Organization, which is virtually controlled by China. You really want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
All right, I don't have time. I don't have time to do this.